Have a great show.
And we are live. Oh, must have been a delayed response. It's already been live for like almost 30 seconds. So we'll just wait for some folks to come on. And then I'll introduce myself again. Oh, we got one. Whew. Looks like it's sunny where you are, Sonia.
It is sunny and then random rain every once in a while, but mostly sunny.
Yeah, it's like really overcast over here. It was sunny at one point, but
It's also just the location of the window.
Yeah, that'll do it as well. Yeah, I always forget that. Okay. So I guess I will introduce myself. So hello again. I am Meryl Franklin, and I'm the director of Rainbow Alley. And we are here for another segment for my Summer Academy speaker series. Yeah, every Tuesday and Thursday until August, the end of August rather, you can chime right on in. If you see below, I have put up a link to our pre-survey. So if you are, it doesn't matter if you're a youth or not, you can fill that out. But if you are a youth and you fill out both the pre and post survey, you can be entered into a raffle for a gift card. We did not have a raffle this month for a gift card because we didn't have any entries. So I just want to make it known that this is an opportunity to get free money. And all you have to do is fill out a very short survey. We try to keep them as short as possible. So the link is below. I also put it in the description of the video. So you can just click right on it and fill it out real quick. Alrighty. So, whoops. Sorry, I closed the window by accident. I was like, wait, what happened? Okay. My computer's not doing what I want it to do. Okay. There we go. Okay. So let's get started. Oh, my computer did a weird thing again. Hold on, y'all. That did not. I swear, things were working a hot minute ago, and now it's just not doing what I want. The video's working fine, but the rest of my computer is not. Promise I was prepared, y'all. Just different things happened.
This is why I should learn some jokes.
I know. I wish I had some jokes to tell. I'm just going to be. This is just. It's going to be what it is. It is. There it is. Okay. That was rough going. Okay, so hello again. So we're gonna get started, and today we're gonna talk about leadership. And I want to introduce our speaker today, which is Sonia Chavez. Um, and she is the founder of Looking to Leap, with a life mission to transform leadership and create spaces where those who have been forgotten can remember and reclaim themselves. She's a veteran, an entrepreneur, a seasoned analyst, a leadership expert, an empath, and a certified life coach. She grew up poor in money, rich in love, and with a shadow of family addiction that followed her everywhere. She spent her life running from shame, addicted to alcohol and achievement, yet no amount of numbing or success could fulfill her emptiness. Then she found her mission and passion for leadership and empowerment. She is an experienced leader, trained facilitator, and fierce leadership coach. She quit her job a year ago, went on a 6-month road trip, became a certified coach, and started up Looking to Leap. Sonia is an advocate for at-risk youth and underrepresented communities. Wow. That's welcome, Sonia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So like, that's quite a journey. I don't know if you wanted to say something about that.
No, it's been quite a journey. I will definitely say that. It is, what I will say is, it is amazing how life creates the exact journey that you need to become what you're meant to become. And so I have a very diverse background in what I was doing in my degree programs and then often my volunteer roles, but everything today for me has come together to make sense on why I do what I do. So, yeah, I will just say, like, trust the journey you're on, because it's going to take you where you're meant to go, even when it makes no sense to you at the moment.
I hear that. So why don't we get started in talking about leadership and like what is leadership and things like that.
Perfect. Do you want me to start the?
You can, yeah.
PowerPoint or okay. And I will say that I am talking specifically about what I'm coining as rebel leadership. Yes. And I don't think it's necessarily different than leadership, but I do think it's a special subset of it. I do think that in our society, we do have a smaller community of people who lead in a different way, and they have a special purpose in the world, and they tend to be our innovators. And when I think of a rebel leader, I think of like MLK, right? And typically in their time when they're leading, they're misunderstood and maybe even seen as rebellious and going against the grain, which we tend to judge a lot. But when we look back at what they created, they were so far ahead of the game that none of us could see what they were trying to create. So that's really what I'm honing in on is I feel like people who grow up, which for me, LGBTQ community is very heavily in this, but when you grow up feeling very different and very other, there's a gift and an opportunity in that space. And I believe that we came into this path for a reason and we're meant for special things. And so how do we take a look at what that special thing is? And then how do we use it towards a really worthy cause in the world? So that's what we'll be talking about today, specifically around leadership.
Awesome.
All right. Are you able to see and share?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So again, this is called Rebel Leadership. And for me, this got created. I went through a 10-month leadership program about 2 years ago. And it was very experiential. So I was not sitting in a classroom following PowerPoints. I actually flew to Spain 4 times in 10 months, and I was working with the same 24 people, all from all over the world. I was one of only 3 Americans in that group. And we were living together and we were eating together, and we were for weeks at a time, we were fully focused on experiential leadership growth. So we did a lot of activities. We did a lot of discussion and engagement. Everything that we did, we talked about, and then we actually would go and practice. And this 10-month program really, really altered my life. And it gave me the missing pieces I had to finally find my voice in a new way. I have a military background, so I was very comfortable with leadership skills because I had grown up in it. But this new way of being a leader for me allowed me to embrace who I was specifically as a leader, and not what everyone else was telling me I was supposed to be. And then I started to notice that the more I showed up as myself, the more people were attracted to that, and the easier I could actually have influence where I was. I spent most of my life in a military and a government setting. And so as you can imagine, it tends to be very structured and very formal. And so seeing someone with a mohawk and tattoos was a little shocking to them some of the time. And I worked with probably some of the highest level of leaders that we had in our organization. And I found that the more I owned who I was and my natural way of being challenging, but also being incredibly loving and empowering at the same time, I had no issues influencing senior leaders because they trusted in what I was providing and they saw the effects of what it could do. So that's when I created Rebel Leadership, because I was noticing that there was this style that people were really attracted to. And I also started to notice that young military members who feel very lost in who they are wanted to know everything about what I was doing and how I was doing it. So this was kind of an introductory workshop that I actually ran for some of them around starting to become aware of what is their version of Rebel Leadership. What is it about them or you that makes you unique? And how do we start to grow that and find ways to actually start to practice putting this into play, and even maybe just start to see yourself as a leader to begin with. I do think that the term leader gets a little over, it kind of gets framed that you must be this certain person in this certain role and a certain age maybe. And I would like to say that I think anyone is a leader if they want to step into it and own it. And our youth today, they are showing us how incredible their natural leader talent is today. I actually think our world is ready for a new version of leadership. And I think my focus and my passion on youth is because I don't think that it's going to be our generation or the generations before me that are going to change and transform leadership. I think it's actually going to be our youth that are going to transform it.
Yeah.
The way that they think is different. The way that they show up is different. Their focus and their drive and their care is very different. And so I want to be a part of that and empowering that. So I define Rebel Leadership about being so centered and strong in what you want to create in the world that standing out becomes the opportunity. It's about finding a new way that goes against imagined limits and barriers and being the catalyst of inspirational change. And this is actually a picture of me at my business launch, where I believe in facing my fears to grow and to overcome. And so I am very uncomfortable dancing in public. And so, of course, what I chose to do at my business launch was to I worked on a performance for about 3 months. And then I performed that dance performance at my business launch for all of my friends and family.
Wow.
And this was the ending shot.
It looks like a good pose.
Yeah, and I had my crew, I had my side dancers with me.
That's awesome. Oh my God.
All right, so we're gonna start with an activity that's called Pick Your Rebel. And this is really about just kind of finding inspiration or even connecting to what is it that inspires you around leadership. And it's particularly people who tend to be viewed as rebels because they're bringing forward something new to the game. And so I have 5 examples of what I believe is a rebel leader. And I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of detail of each one of them. And then I'm going to ask for whoever's watching to put in the chat box who they most resonate with and why they chose that rebel. So starting with Jesus Christ, which when I first put him down, I was a little like people could be offended. But in my eyes, he really was a rebel of his times. Sorry, I got to find the right one. I have them on sticky notes. He really did come out with a new message around forgiveness. And he challenged many of the prevailing views, religious and orthodox, that were going on in that time frame. And then one of his quotes that I chose that I feel like resonates around this space is the "Father, please forgive them, for they know not what they do." And it's to me, such an example of when I think of that quote, I think of, I just watched a video today around, a lot of the civil rights movements, and when when a lot of the marches of peace and nonviolence started to show up, and they were literally teaching to stare the people who were abusing them in the face and forgive them in that moment. That is what I think of, is like the power of doing the exact opposite of what we think needs to be done in the moment. So then I have Oprah Winfrey, and I think everyone knows who Oprah is, but she's an influencer, an author, a philanthropist, and focused on many issues that were facing American women. And the quote that I used for her was, "You are not your circumstances. You are your possibilities. If you know that, you can do anything." All right. And then the third one I have is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And she was the youngest woman ever elected into Congress. And her quote was, "Mentors of mine were under pressure to minimize their femininity. I won't. That takes away my power. I won't compromise who I am." And then we have Jacinda Ardern. And Jacinda Ardern is New Zealand's youngest prime minister in more than 150 years. She got voted in when she was 37 years old. And if anyone's been watching the world as far as what's been happening with COVID, you will see that like New Zealand was, I think, the country that had the most significant success in never even really hitting a peak, because of how she was able to lead her people with information, kindness, and having them choose to come together. So she's been really successful in that space of how she's showing up as a leader today. And it's completely opposite of what people would normally say she should be doing. Let's see. Oh, her quote was, "I really rebel against the idea that politics have to be a place full of ego. You can be strong and you can be kind." And then the last one we have is Mahatma Gandhi, who is an Indian political leader focused on nonviolence and peaceful disobedience. He was known as the father of the nation. And his quote is, "In a gentle way, you can shake the world." That's one of my favorite quotes. It's probably because I'm an introvert, and so I love that like power in gentleness.
Wow.
Okay, so those are the 5 rebels, and I would ask that you put your rebel choice in the chat room and why you chose that rebel. And then Meryl, if you could just let me know what's coming through.
Yeah. We had one person for a while and then they left. So I may have to answer.
Yeah, who would you pick?
So, I mean, I'm with you on the Jesus Christ thing. That took me for a loop a little bit. I was like, wait a minute. I don't know. I remember doing a report on Oprah Winfrey when I was like 5. But I think I have to say Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, I mean, it's partially because I am from New York, and like I remember when she got elected,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, she has been very consistent. She's always
Mm-hmm.
consistent in her message, um, and trying to right wrongs, and she's not afraid to call them out
Mm-hmm.
when anybody
Mm-hmm.
thinks
I love it.
about her. They say all kinds of stuff about her, but
Mm-hmm.
um, especially pertaining to her age and experience. Um, but yeah, and like she was before she got elected, she was a waitress. Um,
Mm.
is so like she she understands what it means to not have a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
Something that I could say really any other politician can say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do like her.
Awesome. And I have another question too is when you heard the term rebel leadership,
Mhm.
what was your first initial thought about that? Like how would you have defined it when you heard it before anything else?
I don't know. I think my brain went to a very radical.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I just like I started when I hear the word rebel in general, just because of um the way society is, I think like
Mm-hmm.
the most extreme.
Mm.
Um, so like extreme left or extreme right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just doing outlandish things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, almost chaotic. But when you
Mm.
hear it with the word leadership, it,
Yeah.
to me, it was just like, it was almost like contradictory.
Mm.
Um, in the sense that like, yeah, I have this like idea of what a rebel is, in these like extreme ways, but leadership looks differently than that because it's more calculated, it's more controlled, it's more intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I didn't really know what to think.
I think you gave a perfect example though of, or that you gave the perfect polarity of it.
Mhm.
And because I do think that we do have a label around what rebel is. I mean, just how it's defined. And it's not that that isn't true. I think there are a ton of rebels in our world who they are chaotic and they are extreme and they're probably not, they are probably doing a lot of damage. But the pairing with the leadership to me is what takes that like wild, chaotic energy and almost like frames it into this like very focused arrow where we have a choice on how we take our energy and how we use it. And a rebel leader takes that wild, intriguing, charged, passionate, intense energy and
Mhm.
funnels it into a cause that they're passionate about.
Mhm.
Whereas a rebel might never have that cause. They're just simply following that and that intensity and that wildness, but with nowhere to direct it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, so it's like a rebel with direction. Yeah.
Which is a perfect actually segue into where we're going next, which is kind of focusing on like this is how society identifies a rebel, right? It's like a misfit,
Mhm.
a troublemaker. Um, the idea that if you're going against the norm, that you're trying to, we don't like to be shaken out of our patterns and what makes us feel safe. And I feel that there are some of us who like whether we like it or not, we make people uncomfortable. And I think that's something that I really started to learn about myself was even when I tried to fit in, I couldn't. And when I'm at my most genuine, truest version of myself, I make people uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
I'm okay with that now. And it's I'm not making them uncomfortable because they don't like me personally as a human being. I'm making them uncomfortable because my natural calling is to call forth truth in the space. It's
Mhm.
what I'm meant to do, and that makes people uncomfortable. Um, And so again, I kind of think I want to remove this concept that going against has to always mean bad or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That there could actually be a lot of good and power, and that it is the people who are willing to go against that often take us where we're needing to go next. So I put a big, we ain't going there anymore. This is about moving beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the things I like to talk about is what's like, we can talk about rebel leadership, but what's the point of it, and what does it really, what impact can it really have?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like right now, today, with Black Lives Matter, we're getting a beautiful example of the power of rebel leadership. And I personally wanted to use someone who was local to Colorado, and someone that I actually follow, and I think he's doing amazing things. And that's Tay Anderson, who is the Denver School Board director. He got voted in when he was 20 years old. He just turned 21, and he's also been one of the main leaders of the marches around Black Lives Matter in Colorado, in Denver specifically. But when I think of him, you know, his cause is so pure. He talks all the time on his videos or his pages or everything he's putting out about, you know, he calls them his babies. Like, he wants to make sure that the children that he's responsible for are safe and fed and have education. And he walks his talk. So he doesn't just talk about it, he shows up. And how he's handled COVID has been really impressive as well, because like the second everything was happening, he was setting up places for the kids to come get their school lunches, because he remembers when he was young and how school lunches were a predominant way that he was actually able to eat every day. And you know, with the Black Lives Matters, he has a very strong opinion, and he gets death threats and emails that are horrible and just crazy and mean, but he doesn't let that, he's able to lead beyond all of that, because he knows that the purpose and the cause that he's doing, it matters the most. And I think what I love about him is he creates this team around him, right? He partners a lot with Leslie Herod.
Yeah.
And he admits when he's wrong. He has a powerful message. He operates with so much heart. But when people look at him, and he gets comments about why he wears a hat backwards, how unprofessional that is. And he gets comments about the language that he uses, and is it appropriate? And is he being too harsh or too strong? And I think these are like perfect examples of it doesn't always feel comfortable for people to change. And you have to have enough of a cause and enough of a passion in you to see past what other people can't see. And so I feel like oftentimes rebel leaders are going to get a lot of pushback. They're going to get a lot of resistance from people. And I create, like, part of this workshop for me is creating and connecting to enough of the reason on why you want to do what you want to do, that you can see past all of that. Because that's one of the hardest things to do, is to not take things personal, is to know that you're going to get people responding to you and reacting to you, and to know that it's natural for general society to not want to change. And none of it's personal. You're just the beautiful messenger and vessel of that change for them, whether they want to see it or not.
Yeah. So you mentioned Tay Anderson's like appearance possibly being a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other barriers that rebel leaders like can face?
I think we see it especially with young leaders, is that age is often used against our leaders. This concept that you must have years of experience, and you must be a certain age to be a leader. And I push against that a lot, because I don't think it's age that makes some, I mean, I get that there is experience to be had, but there is so much wisdom in there's so much wisdom in all of us, and our youth are the closest to that wisdom because it hasn't been numbed out of them and beat out of them as much yet. So I would actually say youth are closer to their natural leader wisdom than any of us are. And they're actually great teachers if we allow them the space to be in who they're meant to be. I would say that there will probably be a barrier around, like, one of the things that actually Tay fights a lot for is Black Lives Matters and queer community. And he brings those two together all the time. And he talks a lot about within his own community of Black members that there's still some resistance even in their own community around LGBTQ members and embracing them. And so even within his own community, he's willing to stand strong on what his belief system is. He also talks a lot about pro-lives, which makes people very uncomfortable. So I think, like, beliefs and how hard you hold your beliefs can definitely hold you back. I think being a member of the LGBT community will be something that, especially depending on in certain places and certain focuses, that will be a huge, it can be a barrier. It will be something that triggers people because it's something they don't fully understand or know how to embrace yet. Being a woman could be a barrier, depending on, I think, Alexandria has experienced a lot of, not only is she young, but she's a woman, and she's a woman with a powerful voice. And women with powerful voices are not sat with very well because, there's this idea that they're too intense or they're too much or they're too loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are just like some of, I think appearances also, like, Tay has his backwards hat. I would say for me, like, getting comfortable owning who I am and how I like to show up. Walking into a room with a bunch of military and government senior leaders that are very, like, they're wearing shirt and tie and they all look a certain way. And I walk in with a mohawk and tattoos. And for a long time, I allowed it to be a barrier until I owned it. And the more I could own it, the less of a barrier it was.
So you mentioned some very big things like, gender identity, sexual orientation, and things like that. And some of those things can bring up issues of safety. Even when you were talking about Tay Anderson, and he gets death threats and
yes.
things like that. So how do you navigate that?
That's a really good question. And, most of my life, I will say it's not something I've had to personally endure, except when I went to Egypt like 7 months ago, maybe a year ago, actually. And it was the first time I've been in a setting that I felt like who I was not accepted. And it was the first time that I got actual, like, I didn't feel safe walking around anywhere by myself just because of the looks and the comments I was getting from people that were locals that were there. Or being followed by men. And it was probably the first time that I have felt that unsafe in a space just because of how I was showing up and how much I went against their belief system around what a woman was supposed to look like and act like and be like. And for me, I used it as an opportunity to really connect with what was, like, I guess, like, using it always as an opportunity. And what I will say is it's okay to be scared, and it's okay if in certain moments you have to, like, back down to some degree. I don't know, maybe you, like, don't want to be as exposed. And I think being safety aware is completely valid and normal. I think surrounding yourself with people is incredibly important. I think it's probably one of the most important things to do, actually, is to have a team of people that you're surrounding yourself with because that's just more eyes and more, I don't know, there is a safety in numbers.
Yeah.
To a large degree, I feel like most reactions are just anger that's misplaced. So I honestly think to some degree, you also have to limit how much you're giving yourself access to those things. Social media is powerful, and it can also be incredibly negative. And it's great to be aware of all of your impacts that you're having. And at the same time, where our attention goes, grows. And so I would say the more you can focus your attention on the people you're impacting and changing their lives, and the less attention you can give to the people who are struggling with the change you're putting in front of their face, that in itself can be really helpful. Like there's a mental health piece to this. It's similar to what's going on right now in the world in general with COVID and with everything else.
Yeah.
That if there was any advice I would give to someone right now who's struggling with depression and anxiety, it would be to limit the news as much as they possibly could.
Yeah.
Or to limit their access to social media if they're struggling with comparison issues of that person looks really happy or that person has all of this. I would say stop looking at social media and really center on like what you have in your present life.
Or these videos that are being spread on social media that are very triggering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, I think that when people share videos that trigger, there's this wanting of people to understand the severity. But I don't think we realize the damage that we can do in those spaces. And thankfully, we all have choice on what we allow ourselves to watch and not watch. And I think sometimes we honestly have to make a real stance for ourselves to say that we are not going to inspire ourselves into action through pain. We're going to inspire ourselves into action through love. And that is a choice. So it's not turning your head, and it's not being unwilling to see what's happening in our world. It's choosing to focus on how you want to impact that wrong in our world. And we can do it by getting ramped up with the pain and people are creating a lot of videos to get us angry and charged. And that is one venue. That is one way for sure. But there's a whole nother way also where you could be getting charged and inspired and passionate. Like I like to watch a lot of things about people who have changed our world. And that's the same way of getting inspired into action as these videos that are out there. So I would say limit as much as you can of what you yourself don't want to create.
Yeah. I mean, so with the social media piece, I know for me, when I was finding all these videos, I don't want to watch any of them, but sometimes they would just automatically start, depends on what platform you're using. And it was like, even if I just saw 5 seconds of it, activated, right? And so, I feel like a lot of people are posting these videos with trigger warnings, and then it's like, because of the way that social media runs, it'll just start playing when you scroll down to it or whatever. And it could be on for 5 seconds less, and it could be like already that charges you. And I just felt like I need to mention that, and that even then it's hard to come down from that.
Yeah. And I think part of it is knowing that that's going to happen sometimes. And I feel like there's an aversion sometimes to us to sitting with discomfort or to sitting with negative emotion. And I think in situations like that, we can't protect ourselves from triggering things 100% by any means. And I think especially with youth, we have to admit that we have a natural curiosity and draw to drama and to emotional things. It's why we have so many reality TV shows, and why those things are so successful is because there's something about them that are alluring for us. So I don't think it's to like feel guilty or wrong, but it's more of like, I think in those moments there are also moments of opportunity to like, those 5 seconds trigger you, and then being able to stop and sit with yourself and say, what am I feeling right now? Like, what is this emotion? And if it's anger, what is it about this that made me angry? And like, you just keep going a little bit deeper and giving yourself the ability to sit with it and to allow it to process and be and to do a breathing exercise, which literally could just mean deep breathing. Deep breathing is like a game changer because we don't actually breathe deeply very often.
You really don't. You really don't. Yeah. And yeah, so like how do we, when we get triggered like that, how do we transform that into something productive or something that is helpful?
Yeah. Oh, I think part of it is getting the emotion charge out of it, because that's typically when we lose ourselves a little bit, is in the emotion. And I believe awareness is the first step. So the first, and awareness and disassociating from the emotion as equating to who we are. So if you see a video and you feel anger, it's giving yourself that 1 second to simply say, I'm getting triggered right now. I'm feeling angry. And then once you have that, okay, I'm feeling angry, then you move it away from yourself, right? Like, I'm not this anger. I'm simply feeling angry right now. What is it that's making me angry? And if you can go below that, it might be, I'm tired of seeing this happen, right? And then you kind of take that and you're like, that feels very sad and exhausting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you just kind of like unlayer, because there's something in it that is also being offered to you. And there's something that, like, we're all a bunch of wounds walking around needing to be healed. And it's why we get triggered so much. And the really taking it away from who you are, right? Like, you're not your anger, and you're not your sadness, and you're not your anxiety. Those are things that you're feeling, and those are things that you're experiencing, but they don't identify who you are. So it's okay to sit with them, and it's also okay to choose not to. So I feel like once you can get to that, like, okay, I'm feeling sad right now, let me breathe into that. Sadness feels really hard. Sadness feels really lonely. And like, you breathe into it and you're acknowledging it, but you're not owning it. And then if you can get yourself to a calmer space, then you have choice, and you can say, what do I want to do with this sadness? Do I want to stay in it, or do I want to choose something different? Do I want to go for a walk and let the sadness kind of run off of me? And at least then, if you're going to be sad, you're at least choosing it at that point.
Okay. Yeah, we got real deep, y'all.
Sorry, it's just
real deep. Yeah, I mean, and that's easier said than done.
It's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
It's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, the more you can recognize, like, the more you can have those moments of at least being able to say, oh, I'm feeling this right now.
Yeah.
That in itself can be a game changer. And I think it's just being able to acknowledge the small little pieces. A lot, I think we think that we need to have these like big, amazing transformations, and those are great. But like, those small little baby step pieces, like, those will get you so far.
Awesome.
Let me see what I have. Oh, okay. So I don't know how this is going to work. What I might end up doing is we can just leave the questions up, so that people have them enough to sit with, and that's something that they can do. But really, I kind of like the Rebel Ripple. This was really about, I feel like there's a lot of rebels showing up in the world because we're ready for more, and we're ready for new, and we're ready for different. And there's a ripple that I would like to help contribute towards, because I think it's already happening. I just want to be a part of also contributing towards it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like the rebel leadership is a lot about inspiring other people. It's a lot about being able to stand where others aren't able to, and create the space for them to show up. Because a lot of times, like when I think of the LGBTQ community, like where are the role models of standing for who you are, no matter how painful it is? And we are the role models of being willing to lose it all in order to live the life that we want to live and to live freely. And the journeys we have to take to really be able to own ourselves, and to see that sometimes people just can't accept who we are in that moment. And yet we know it's still the right path for us. And so, there's a lot of inspiration and teaching that the LGBT community has to offer. And we know a lot about unknown, and we know a lot about resilience. And when I think of what's happening with COVID right now, I feel like we have a lot of gifts to offer, because a lot of people are feeling very uncertain and very unsure of themselves. So when I think of like the Rebel Ripple, it's like inspiration, it's having impact. One of the biggest things that I have found, that when I'm getting kind of lost in myself, or lost in my own emotion, or lost in my own story, that if I can reach out and help someone in that moment, it actually helps take me out of my own space. That there's something about serving that is just as important as our own personal journey. I think there is so much curiosity that is needing in this world. Like, we've lost our ability to be curious. And to me, rebel leadership is all about curiosity. It's being willing to show up, asking questions rather than making assumptions. And it's also, we naturally bring curiosity into the space because there's typically something about us that makes people unsure and want to know more. And then it takes a ton of courage to be to step up into leadership in this way, because you're leading the charge and you're creating the path. And if you think of like a path in a jungle, you're the one like chopping down the big brush, and you're going to get scraped and you're going to get scratched, but it's worth the journey. And then at the bottom, I have longings and cause, and that's because I feel like this is what really keeps us going. It's not easy to stay the course, and you need something that is luring you enough, that you care deeply enough about, that will allow you to continue to show up. And there's days where like I struggle to show up.
That's right.
But so it's not about like being perfect in every day, or like having this amazing energy every single day. It's really about like, man, when I'm tired, I show up tired. Or when I'm questioning myself, I show up questioning myself. And so it's not because I want to be, I mean, I do want to be successful, but for me, it's deeper than that. I want to let the person who's watching my video that I'm posting know that like they're not alone in their tiredness. Or I want them to know that like me being able to have impact on people, especially when I think of youth. Like for me, youth are a fire and a passion that like renew my energy in an instant, because I want youth to know and remember that like every day is a new day. Every moment is a new moment. And they're never alone, like they're just, I don't know. I just think when I think of our youth, like I remember those days of being young, and it's so painful and it's so tumultuous and it's so confusing. And I just want to show them that like you can be impactful, you can be something different, you can be someone unique, you can go against the grain, and you can do it in ways where like it doesn't have to mean that life is hard. You can inspire others, and you can start doing it today.
Wow.
Sorry.
No, that's good. So yeah, with your last statement, like how can we start today? Like,
That's a great. Well, I mean, one of them is that's kind of why I created. So this was a worksheet, but
mhm.
it's why I created kind of like these questions to think through, and I'll describe them. And actually, Meryl, I can send you this worksheet if you want. I don't know if that would be helpful because it goes a little bit more into detail. But
Okay.
first is just looking at like what is your definition of a rebel leader, or even you could just say if you don't want to be a rebel leader, like what's your definition of a leader in general, because your definition is the one that matters. And that definition will be different for everybody. And what's important is that you're starting to look at who you want to become as a leader, not who someone else wants to become or someone else is telling you that you should be becoming. And then I kind of wanted to make this specific to a real use case that they could work with. And so, like, what is a longing you have? Because longings is what help us connect and like focus our energy. So, like, what's a longing you have as a youth leader within Rainbow Alley? So, when you take like this group of Rainbow Alley youth, what does you being a leader look like in this group? What would be a longing you'd want for the group? Maybe it's more connection, or maybe it's to have a cause to go pursue, or maybe it's to volunteer. I don't know, but like, what is that longing that you have? And then identifying your cause. So the longing to me is kind of like the emotion. It's like the passion piece of it. It's like that carrot hanging and dangling, and you want that carrot, and you're really like pulling towards it, and it kind of like pulls you naturally in that direction. I feel like the cause is the piece that actually moves us into action. And so a lot of people don't necessarily know their cause. You could almost say like life purpose, like what's your life purpose in the world? So it's like, what's your cause within Rainbow Alley? Like, what are you here that's specific to you, that's special about you, that you can offer this group? And one of the ways that you can kind of narrow down on that is think of like the biggest compliment someone has ever given you. And what was it about that was so impactful for you? And then at the same time, think of the biggest criticism someone has ever gave you. And for the same reason, what was it about that criticism that was so painful to hear? I'm trying to think of an example, because like for a long time, if someone were to ever, I'm trying to think what triggers me even right now. Like if someone accuses me of like not being genuine, of being fake, that is like a huge issue for me. It's like a huge trigger for me. I get really defensive right away. And but the biggest compliment someone could ever give me is that I'm unique or that I'm authentic. And so for me, a big piece of like my cause is that I role model everything that I teach about and everything that I do, that I live what I speak. And I learn a lot, but I have to live it before I'll ever teach it, or before I'll ever promote it or believe in it. And then after those two, another thing you can do is if you were to visualize a giant billboard and it's completely empty, and you could say anything on this billboard that you wanted to. And it could be a symbol, it could be a quote, it could be a picture, it could be whatever you want. But whatever this billboard is, it's going to tell people what's most important about you. What would be on that billboard? And these are kind of some questions to like open up, like, what is it that's important for you? to be seen as, to be known as, and to not be known as, because having something to push against can actually bring a lot of clarity also. And then from there, trying to really narrow down like what your purpose could be as a leader or a rebel leader. And then you could take that and actually make it specific to Rainbow Alley. So like, you know, if authenticity and genuineness and bringing truth is one of your things, like I'm here to be authentic and bring truth. And it'd be like, okay, so if I have a longing for connection in Rainbow Alley, and my purpose is to bring truth and to be authentic, then how can I show up with my truth making, my genuine authenticness, and create connection in Rainbow Alley, right? Like it kind of gives you a place to start breaking it down and then using like an actual situation on how you can start practicing leadership in your life. You could maybe do this with your family, like, you know, what's a longing you have for your family? And then what truth or what cause did you come out with and did you identify? And then how do you become that in your family? So it's kind of like, rather than waiting for something to become the change for you, you actually take ownership and become the change for it.
Wow. I love this. I feel like it's very, because there are a lot of like big concepts in there, but it's broken down into small enough pieces that it makes sense. And I would really like, especially for the youth who watch this afterwards, I would really love to hear what comes out of that. Because, you know, Rainbow Alley is all about being a youth-led space, and we want youth to be more involved in and the programming and things like that. And I feel like this could give an opportunity to have some of our youth who may not see themselves necessarily as leaders actually think of themselves as leaders. And so I kind of love this.
Awesome.
Please do send me the document. I'll find a way of posting it.
Okay.
On our social media.
Cool. Yeah, and then the last part is really just there is like a visualization that I when in the workshop when I'm sitting with people that I actually run them through, and actually I could probably record that and send that to you as well, Meryl.
Okay.
But it's a visualization to kind of get anyone connected with their own personal rebel leader. So a lot of this can be seen in like people that you really get inspired by, right? And what is it about them that inspires you? Sometimes it might be the way that they dress or the way that they speak, how they carry themselves, the qualities and traits that they have. So like gentleness, kindness, fierceness, strength, confidence. And so this is really like the visualization of these questions are meant to be like, it's great to have inspiration and it's great to look up to people and to have role models. But what we really want to know is like, who's the rebel leader in you? Because that one's more important than any other one for you. So it'd be like if you were to like have no limitations holding you back, how would you speak and how would you dress? You know, how would you carry yourself? What would be your qualities and traits as a rebel leader? And then finishing it off with like giving a name or a symbol or an identity. And that's really just to have something to like bring resonance and to connect with. We do a lot of visualizations in our coach training, and actually in my leadership workshop also, we did a lot of visualizations. And for me, it's been powerful. Some people like it. Some people don't fully connect with it. But, you know, I say take what works and don't worry about anything else. But like I set up structures for myself that really connect. A lot of my look in how I show up has a lot to do with me connecting with my inner leader. Literally from visualizations that I've had, my tattoos all have significant meaning to me for a phase of my life that I was in that directly ties me into a leadership aspect of myself. I have the name in my Facebook page. It's Sonia Dahlia Chavez. And that's because dahlia is not just a flower that I absolutely love, but it's also the name that I gave my inner leader and that I connect with a lot. And there's just a different energy that I embody when I think of her. It's just really like finding ways to connect a different energy with yourself. Like if it makes you feel really confident to wear something specific, wear that thing and practice it. Um, play around with like your postures and how you walk into a room. Or if you notice that you tend to disappear in a group setting, practice when you start to feel yourself close in, like practice actually sitting up and like purposely opening your arms up and just see what that offers you. It's just a lot of different like little small things to start to play with. But yeah, but I can actually record the visualization itself, and that could be something that anyone watching could access.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
And then I will. Yeah, so I can either leave this up or I could put my contact info up. It's up to you, Meryl. You just let me know.
Okay, we can leave this up for a few.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, we can, I don't see very many people watching, but if there are any questions, this is the time to ask. If you put them in the comments, we can see them and answer them. So while y'all are thinking about that, I have a couple more questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you sort of tapped into this a little bit, but like how do you see yourself as a leader, and like what was it like to like discover your leadership skills and your way of leading? That's the word, leading.
Yeah, I will say that I probably got a little early of a head start because I joined the Air Force when I was 17. And they kind of beat leadership into you, sort of, whether you like it or not. But I also found that I sort of had a natural ability with it. I was resistant, but I also had a natural ability. And I think when I was in the military, and especially when I was younger, I kind of felt, I just thought like military was getting people to follow you through respect and to some degree fear, right? And so I was probably like a terrible leader in the beginning. And then I started to discover that like that just didn't feel good and it didn't feel right for me. And but then I became sort of the like wishy-washy, like just throw a little bit of guilt at me and you can kind of get what you want leader. That wasn't very great either. And so I think I really started to, the more that I could do my own growth and development within myself. So I started to volunteer mostly with youth. And I started to put myself in settings where like the impact I had mattered. And so I cared a lot about learning how to lead. And I started to do my own work around why was I so scared to be disliked? And why was it so hard to speak my opinion? And then I started to actually just practice it in small set. Like sometimes I would practice in comfortable settings just to make it a little easier. And then I would just start to practice with being willing to be disliked when I would say something to someone. And it's step by step, it just started to grow. And then that 10-month leadership program that I took was like, for me, it was kind of a turbocharged. What I learned in that 10 months probably would have taken me like 5 years. And that was when I discovered like, oh, I can be all things at once. Like I don't have to be, I can be intense and I can be loving. I can have people influence and also respect me and not need to threaten them or not need to control them. And so it sort of develops over time. And that's what I want to say is like, right now, as a youth, like you have so much time to really like baby steps start to build who you are, and where you will be in like 5 years or 10 years looking back. Like, it's just amazing what could happen in that time. And it's just being willing to be fumbly and be willing to be vulnerable and be willing to fail, because failure is absolutely your best teacher and your greatest gifts.
Mm. Yeah, sure is. Oh man. I wish someone had talked to me about these things when I was younger.
Me too.
Ooh, it would have saved me a whole lot of things. And then I'm still not seeing any questions in the comments just yet.
Okay.
But I do have one more question.
Okay.
So, you know, I think you kind of touched on this in the beginning, but like, what would you say to a young person? Like, what advice would you give them, like right now, like if they just walked up to you?
That's a really good question. I guess like the first thing that immediately came to my mind, and I do say this a lot with anyone that I work with or that I have in my life that I care about, is like, you are enough already. Like, you have nothing to prove. You know, we come into life and we're so hopeful, and that gets taken out of us pretty quickly. But I would say, like, you have everything you need. You just have to own it, and you just have to choose it. And, you know, we spend our lives like trying to earn enough degrees or get the right training or like do all these things to prove our value. And you already have all the value within you. Like, it's not a there's nothing you need to externally acquire. It's actually, you just need to remember. You need to remember who you came here to be, and you need to remember who you already are. And if you could center back in that every single day, if you could just sit with yourself for 5 minutes a day, and whatever connects you, touch your heart, close your eyes, breathe heavily, but just remember who you are and why you came to this world, and that you are enough right here and right now. And everything else that you do from here is just bonus. Like, you showing up and waking up every day, like, that's the fight. Like, you're everything else that you create is a choice, and it's bonus. I don't know how that resonates, but like, I just feel like so many people just need to hear, especially our youth today, that like, man, you're already worth loving. You have nothing to prove.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very powerful statement. And I feel like, yeah, especially now with everything being all extra chaotic, that's something that could be easily forgotten. So yeah, I'm right there with you on it. Okay.
Well, yeah. And I think like what you can create from coming from, you will create so much more impact from a place of, I'm already enough. And so then whatever I create is coming from that, versus anxiety. I have so much to prove. I have so much to gain. I need so many things external to myself, and you're moving from that. It will be a very different thing that you create from that space.
Wow. That definitely resonates with me. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you're reading me a little bit, but that's so I still don't see any questions in the chat as of yet. I think, yeah, you could pull up your contact information.
Okay. Oh, the good, the good. I've been reckless, but I'm not a rebel without a cause. That was just like an ending of, it's all about having a cause. And then here's my contact info.
And yeah, so this is how you can reach out to Sonia.
I didn't put my Facebook on here, but I am pretty active on Facebook also.
If they just like look it up, they can find it, right?
Yeah, if they just look up my name, it has Dahlia in the middle. It's Sonia Dahlia Chavez on Facebook.
Mm. Okay.
And they'll be able to find me that way.
That's awesome. So they'll be able to email you, call you, and reach you on Facebook.
Yep.
Very accessible. Awesome. So, while that is up, I just want to remind folks of our surveys. I have a link to the post survey below, and it's also in the description. Again, I'll say if you fill out both the pre and post survey and you are a young person, you can be entered into a raffle for a gift card. So fill them out, you get free money, you help us out. So we know if you are getting what you need out of these, out of the speaker series that we have going on. So just another reminder. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Is there anything, Sonia, any last words that you have to say to the young people?
I would just say thank you, first off. And for all of you that watch, thank you for that also. And I hope that I've offered something that's helpful and impactful and gives you some solid things to actually work with to just even step into or being aware of like who you are as a leader, because you are so needed right now.
Well, awesome, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Sonia, for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And again, I'd like to thank Kendra from Rain Frog Interpreters, who has been interpreting all of our videos with us. So thank you for being here and providing that. Alrighty, so with that, I say keep it clean, queer, and under control.
Bye, guys.
Bye.